Hi, everyone. This is Shifra Bloom on the What is God podcast. Welcome back for another episode. And today we have Anna Isabel. And Anna is a medicine woman from the Mexican tradition. She's a Mexican medicine woman, and she works as a life coach, an empowerment coach for women. She also hosts and leads for many years now medicine retreats, taking men and women down to do medicine work in Mexico. She's a very powerful healer herself. I have known her personally for some time now and just seen a lot of integrity with the way that she holds containers. And in her work, what's really unique and special about her work is that she's combining many years of training and practice as someone in the coaching and personal development world with the medicine work and the medicine woman work that she has inherited from her own lineage from Mexico. And so these two things together create a very unique perspective, which is why I really wanted to bring her on and get her answers to these questions about God, because she is working so intimately with spirit, and she is really bridging these cultures of the Western world and the Western spiritual personal development perspective with this really ancient Mexican perspective as well. So, Anna, welcome.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. I was like, wow. I'm so honored to be here and to have this amazing conversation with you. I mean, Shifa, we've known each other for quite some time now, and each time we have conversation, it's like, oh my gosh, it's been 2 hours. We could talk for on and on and on, and I love it because we can talk about anything and everything. And for me, it's important because we can honor each other's perspectives. We can bounce off of each other, and I think that's beautiful, these conversations. So I'm excited to be here to have another amazing conversation with you.
Me too. So, yeah, we have talked about so many things and could talk about so many things. Even just our brief catch up before the call ended up being 45
Yeah,
minutes. And then we're like, okay, let's do
from
the
15
recording.
minutes to 45. That's awesome.
It's great. And that's just part of why I'm so excited to see where this conversation goes. So the topic of this podcast in particular is, what is God? And the question at hand is, what and where is God, and what does it have to do with me? And so there's a lot of different ways we could dive into this question, but I will hand you the floor.
So it's so interesting because when you sent me that message and that question, I was like sitting with it and just marinating on that question. Like, based on where I'm at now and based on the experiences I've had, I'm like, that is a very interesting question. And then my mind started to go so many different places, and so many different emotions started coming up. Because the first time I ever asked myself that question was when I really began my spiritual journey back in 2005. And I remember connecting with this friend that at that time was sharing a lot of spiritual stuff, right? So I remember sending him an email, and I asked him, hey, do you believe in God?
Mm,
And that opened up a whole conversation. It opened up so much for me because I grew up Catholic. So growing up Catholic, you have certain beliefs and certain structures and what God is, right? And what God isn't.
mm,
So I started to dive into what it meant for me, like a deeper exploration. And I mean, fast forward many, many years later, and then start working with plant medicine, I had a different perspective on what God is, and what it is for me and what I've been, conditioned to believe it is. Um, my belief system, it was almost like restructuring everything for me. So what I started resonating with was, God, what is God? God for me is like nameless, formless. It's infinity, it's vibration, it's energy. It's like there wasn't really like a name that I could put to it, but when I heard the word God, this is what resonated with me. And just doing the work with the plant medicine and my experiences, I was like, wow, that is such a powerful, powerful word, because it can move a lot for
Mm,
someone. Just in that, it moved a lot for me too. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because I really truly believe that we are all one consciousness,
mm,
just experiencing itself through different perspectives, like we are all such beautiful mirrors too, right? So when I think of it, I always ask myself, like, you know, not to throw religion in there or make this even a big topic, but I would always say, like, what would Jesus do?
mm,
Because when I think of God, I think of like um how Jesus was, right? That God, like the seeing everyone's essence, not the personality, not the experience that they're having, but just seeing them as this oneness. Like, I am me, you are me, like, this oneness. And from that space, being able to have that human experience with them, from a very different place, you know?
mm. Yeah. Yeah. You said, we're all one. We're all this oneness, seeing through many different perspectives. And I love having these conversations because, my background, I come from the Jewish lineage. I'm Jewish. I work with Jewish mysticism. I also studied uh, tantric Vedic lineages when I was doing and teaching yoga for, many, many years. And now I talk to someone who's, has different backgrounds in working with plant medicine and in Mexican medicine tradition and in more, traditional Western life coaching and like all. And yet I keep hearing over and over, it comes back to this oneness. And I'm coming out with my book this summer. I don't think I told you yet. I'm going to
No,
publish it finally this summer.
awesome.
And
Congrats.
I talk about this in there as well. It's exactly what you said. It's like that same thing of it's all oneness fractalized into many different perspectives, which is me and you. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
very Jewish concept, but you're not speaking from a Jewish perspective. And so I just love when I hear that, because I feel like this topic of God has throughout history sometimes been a very divisive topic. And yet through
Mm-hmm.
these conversations, I'm seeing so much connection on the topic of God, even amidst so many different perspectives.
Exactly. I love that too, because, I mentioned Jesus, but also I've learned a lot about, these deities
Mm,
in, you know, Hinduism
mm,
and from India. And I really connect with like Lakshmi. So when you hear the word God too, and then you think of like whatever's your belief system, it's kind of, for me, I realized that there's so many different versions, right? To so many different cultures, but that is what God is to them. And it
mm,
really is like energy, like, for example, like, goddess Lakshmi
mm,
or Shiva and all of that. That is just energy that you're tuning into, that you're tapping into, it's not like, how some people have been conditioned to believe like religion is like control. Like, this is the way, and
mm,
this is the only way, and I realized that there's many, many different ways to get to that one truth,
mm,
you know, like you have your truth, I have my truth. There's people out there that have different truths, but there is like that one truth, and it's that oneness, you know, it's that everything is everything, and then when the ego chooses to separate is when the judgment kicks in, right? The judgment kicks in, and then you're separate from that person. Now you're like, no, wait a minute, religion is this religion is better than this religion, and you know their belief system is better than this belief system, and that just causes so much division, so
mm,
much judgment. And for me too, I think like the universal language, right, of love,
mm.
you know can you still love that person if they have a different belief or a different perspective? If
Right.
that resonates with them, great. you
Yeah.
know
Like at the end of the day, maybe that's even more important than if we understand this concept of God, which really is very hard for us human beings to articulate and fathom and put into a box that which is not boxable. And at the end of the
exactly.
day, if we can, you know, love our fellow men, meaning men and women, as ourself, maybe hypothesis, that's more important than being able to give a definition at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day.
Yeah, I love the way you say that. That
You
totally
know,
resonates.
it's a hypothesis, it's one potential hypothesis.
Yeah.
But it's something to lean into and to ponder.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just like such a beautiful conversation too, because it invites others to just honor different perspectives, different belief
Yeah,
systems, and for me, like, my experience has been like when there's like judgment of the other person's belief systems and they're
yeah,
so wrong and it's almost like sad, but it's not because it's still part of it. You know,
yeah,
again, they're experiencing, life through a lens of like where they're at the
yeah.
level of their own consciousness, their own understanding, which is not wrong at all, you
Right.
know?
I've noticed in these conversations too. So just as much as pretty much every conversation I have had so far, there is so much connection where, oh wow, this person's speaking from a different background, and yet their definition of God has so much crossover with how I would define God from my perspective with my background. And also true is that in most of the conversations, there's been some things that the person might say that I think, oh, that's a really unique perspective that isn't exactly how my tradition would view it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I'm approaching it with just like openness and curiosity. And every person I've spoken to is a loving human being who's doing good healing work on this planet. And you think, they have a path that is their path, but who am I to judge it? Because at the end of the day, they're a loving, kind person doing good work on the earth, and they have their lineage that they come from. And
Exactly.
that's a thing too, is there are different paths for different lineages and for different people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And also for me, what comes up as you share that, it's like everybody serves a purpose,
Hmm.
regardless of how they're showing up for someone else, right? Like every perspective that person has, like the important question to ask is, that doesn't resonate with me, but I accept, your perspective, I respect your perspective. And if that conversation is not aligned, not making that person wrong or judging them, labeling, oh, they're weird, they're that, wow, look at where they're at. Because that person serves a purpose, it's like that person is going to speak to 10 other different people who are going to resonate deeply with that message based on where they're at. Like I think everything is energy and vibration, right? Everything's vibrating at a certain frequency. So based on where you're at too, in your vibration, you're going to attract people that are resonating with you,
Yeah.
so can you accept someone's perspective? Doesn't mean that you agree with it, doesn't mean that you're going to start converting, your belief system, to match theirs,
Yeah.
but it's just that beautiful acceptance of humanity and each different person where they're at, their own divinity. To me, I feel like, we are all divine beings, and in our own truth, in our own process, you know, and our own divinity, just
Yeah.
looking at everyone like, wow, this is divine, she's divine, the dog is divine, the tree is divine,
Let's see your divine. I want to ask you, so when we get to the part of the question, so what does it have to do with us? Part of the question, um, I'm curious how either in your own life or just in the work that you do, like you've worked with hundreds of people, and if I could put it in my own words, like you've facilitated hundreds of people, helping them to connect to the divine. Like that's what I see underlying all the work that you're doing is that you're doing. And so how do you, let me see if I can frame the question, and feel free to reframe the question if you have a better way to answer it. But what I'm honing in on is this question of like, if you see someone and they feel a little bit disconnected from what we're calling the divine, right? first part of the question is like, what are ways that they can start to reconnect? Because this is the what does it have to do with us? And then once they've reconnected, and maybe there's gradients and levels to what that even means, once they've reconnected or in that process, how might that look in the actual practical life of a person? Because, we talk about, you said earlier, spirituality in quotes.
Yeah.
It's a very spiritual conversation. And yet I'm a very practical person. I want to see, fine, God is a very spiritual, lofty topic, but what does it have to do with me? How do I take a person who feels disconnected? What does their life look like? And then how does it actually affect my life to connect to this thing that we're calling the divine? Why do I need some of that?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, you say it and I'm already like marinating on so much.
Yeah, I
and just
know.
really into like, for me, my experience has been of supporting people in the remembrance of their own divinity, right? Because I've spoken to a lot of people where it's almost like they separate themselves from the word God or divine, as separate. But when, supporting them and tuning into their own divinity, right? Their own oneness, their own connection, like you're not separate from, you can tune in, closing your eyes and sit in a meditation. There's so many people that I've spoken to that, are very disconnected from that and don't know how to meditate, don't know how to sit still, because they're afraid and they've been taught that, God is something outside, the divinity is something that is out, like you have to work so hard to reach that and then be called divine, that's just been my experience with some of the people that I've, been supporting in that space. And then for me, that's why I've been an advocate for sitting with plant medicine. It's not for everyone,
Okay.
but it is an opportunity and it's a great tool to help those people tune into that part of themselves, because for me, it's like plant medicine opens up a portal to different dimensions of your own consciousness,
Right.
So it's like you get to experience yourself, in many different ways, and then come to that realization that you are it. You are the one, all the answers you seek are inside of you. It's just removing, the blocks, the layers of, whatever's keeping you stuck or whatever's in the way of you accessing that truth for yourself, So when I hear the word divinity, the word God, it's like so much. I mean, there's so many different ways of looking at it, but I feel for me, what resonates deeply, it's just that remembrance, of who you really are, not who you've been conditioned to be, not who you came to experience as a human. We are here as human beings having the human experience,
Right.
but we are souls, infinite souls, right? Yeah, that's a whole other topic, I'm sure.
That's a great, yeah. Wait, we could go that way too. I mean, it's so fun too when you like run across your soul family and you're like, hey, it's nice to see you again. Like,
Exactly. Like I remember you.
yeah. I remember this reminds me of something I've probably talked about this before, but when I was 15, I was living in the forest of North Carolina, going to this semester school for sophomores in high school. And it was really cool. We got to like live in cabins and spend a lot of time outside and really connect with community and nature and learn these neat skills that we didn't get to learn in regular high school. And I remember one day I had gone on a little solo hike during my, free hour or whatever during the day. And I was coming back down and there's just a little pond and it started to rain. And there's something about rain for me this has happened other times in my life. It can create this trance-like state for me with the rain. And there's something just monotonous about the raindrops and then the fog that creates the mists. And it's like the veil is, becoming visible kind of feeling. And this is the first memory I have of this happening. And I was 15 and it was, misty, and the mist is coming down lower. So you're really like in the cloud, and it starts to rain on this pond. And I was watching the raindrops drop into the pond and watching the ripples just like ripple out. And for some reason, I had this trance-like moment where I had that initial remembering. I was always a
Mm,
deep kid, but I had like a drop in of the remembering. And the remembering was, oh, we drop in like a raindrop.
mm,
And as soon as we come in, it's like it's as if our spiritual brothers and sisters and spiritual family give us our mission. We put it in our pocket and they say, but as soon as you drop in, you're gonna forget.
mm.
And you're like, I won't forget. And then you drop in and you forget.
Yeah.
And you do. And then we're on that path of remembering, and we get these whispers and hints of it, maybe in a moment of mist and raindrops at the pond in the forest in North Carolina. Maybe it comes in a moment of looking deeply into someone's eyes. Maybe it comes through traditional prayer. Maybe it comes through medicine work, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to tell that story because I resonate so deeply, and it brought up that memory of that initial remembrance. Oh,
Yeah.
this is what I'm doing here.
And I love that, because when you share that story, what comes up for me is like the word that a lot of people use to describe remembrance. And it's like the spiritual awakening. Oh, you just had a
Mm,
spiritual awakening. But to me, it's like when you're sharing that, it's like, yeah, that's the remembrance, right? And I feel personally like I've had a few of those instances where people would be like, oh, you just had a spiritual awakening. I was
mm,
like, yeah, I think it was just moments of remembering, the deeper truth. It's like going through life experiences, it's just peeling away layers, like whatever my soul chose to experience in this lifetime, you know, I'm having those experiences, and then something happens where it's like, okay, Anna, remember who you really are. Remember your truth. Just
right.
remember, right? Going back to that. So that's a beautiful story because it brings up so much for me too. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've had so many of those experiences where it's an opportunity to, yeah, to remember. It's like that alignment, and then once I do like reconnect with that part of myself and I remember who I really am, right? And that everything that's happening external, it's just an experience to help me grow, to help me evolve, to move to the next level of my life,
Mm,
and it's like that once I make that connection and I remember, it's like when alignment hits and everything just starts flowing in my life, so magically,
right.
so
Yeah.
effortlessly. It's like that beautiful flow state that you're in, right?
Well, I think what you said too of like you have these moments of remembrance, and then but then the key is to know how to interpret the lessons, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the importance of mentorship and guidance comes in. And even with medicine work, I mean, medicine work is a great example of a time where a person could do medicine and get blasted open and have an experience of God and then not have integration.
Yes.
Or a person could have that experience and then have mentorship and guidance and integration. And the result is going to be, it's like you can have this epiphany remembrance, but in some cases it can drive people crazy, and in some people places it can evolve people on their path and make them a more integrated person.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that you bring that up. That is the most important part of working with plant medicine, is the integrating of that experience, right? I needed to talk to therapists and coaches to help with my integration. Although I was teaching others how to integrate, I also had to integrate my own experience and ground in, right?
Yeah.
Because like I said, like it's that portal that opens up, and a lot of people, if they don't integrate, it's like that portal stays open, you
Yeah.
know, and they get, like what they say, lost.
Yeah.
They stay stuck in a different reality. And I
Yeah.
know it sounds scary, but it could happen when you don't have that support of a coach, when you don't have the support of a therapist. Like
Yeah.
working with that therapist, I was like, oh my gosh, so much made sense. Not that they told me, why that happened in my experience, like let's say with plant medicine. It's not like they told me, oh, this is why you experienced that, but they helped me remember and for me to access my own truth. And
Yeah.
that was powerful for me. I was like, oh, this is what integration is like really
Yeah.
tuning in and feeling more than from the level of mind,
Yeah.
because
Right.
any experience, even like when you have a profound coaching experience in a coaching program, like I remember sitting with you, that was profound for me. I
Mm.
mean, sitting with you, something like you access something, a part of me that I didn't even know needed healing. And I cried and I was like, whoa, like I thought I had worked on this layer, right? But
Mm.
something else was accessed. But it's, and going back to that, the importance of working, alongside a mentor, a
Right.
coach, someone that could support you on your journey, to
Well,
remember.
and just for people who are listening, so they know what you're referring to, I did a story work session with Anna. And so that's what she's talking about, is she got to experience a session of the work that I do. And if anyone is interested in learning more about that, they can go to my website, shifrabloom.com, and there'll be more information there if people are interested in experiencing that for themselves. So yeah, just so people know what you're referring to there.
Yeah, yeah.
So the thing as you were speaking, it made me think of is, that importance of integration and bringing it into the world. In the Jewish mysticism, there's all these like rituals, and I feel like it's probably different rituals, but maybe similar in the way you would approach this. But in Jewish mysticism, there's so many rituals that ground you into the world. And sometimes it's like, why do we have to do that and that and
Yeah.
that and that? And like, why all these little things? But part of it is that they're bringing you into the body and they're making you stay attached to the world. And in fact, the goal is not to just have this spiritual awakening, which is an interesting term. I actually have a lot of resistance to that word. And I was
Yeah.
curious if that ever comes up for you, although I guess it's not wrong. But, the goal isn't to just have this awakening and be blasted off. The goal in Jewish mysticism is to be able to access higher levels of consciousness, to
Mhm.
draw down more divine light into this world, to elevate this world, to elevate this experience. And so the idea is to, again, integrate and to combine these spiritual experiences with things that are going to draw us back into the body, draw us back into the everyday, and then it's that middle place. So I'm, curious if that, how that lands with your work.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's more for me what I resonate with is just a remembrance.
Mm.
I feel like you wake up to something different.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore that spiritual awakening could be for me what resonates is like, oh, I woke up to something different. There's more. There's more to me. There's more to life. There's more to this existence. But I don't feel like when you have a spiritual awakening, you're already awakened and that's it.
Yeah.
I think
Right. There's always more.
yeah, it's like almost like, the Matrix, right? I love sharing this because it's like it is so true, right? Like it's almost like taking the red pill. It's like you can't go back, because now you're open and you're awake to a different reality,
Yeah.
that there's more to you, that there's more to life, that there's more to this physical body, you know? It's you're just having a human experience and that there's more and why you're here. Like the question for me came up, when I asked the question, what is God? Is
Yeah.
like, well, what am I doing here? Like,
Mm.
what is my purpose? What am I meant to be doing? And for me, it took me quite some time based on my conditioning to even be open to exploring more of that because it was scary, because for me, I feel personally that religion was controlling me,
Mm.
you know I've had many experiences where I was kind of mad at God, you know and I had judgment towards the Catholic religion because of my experience as a little girl. So I'll just share really quickly the story. But, when I was young, I did my first communion at
Mm.
one church. So we used to go to this church every Sunday. And then the priest told my mom that I had to do my first communion again. Oh, no, wait, let me skip back. So we started going to a different church. And this church was talking bad about the other church that we used to go to, and said, no, your daughter has to do her first communion again because that church, da 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 da. So my mom had to pay money again. We bought a whole different dress. And for me, that's when I started to question. But it
Mm.
wasn't like God, but it was what was happening in the church that made me judge religion and God. Like, what?
Mhm.
You're taking advantage of this woman that knows no better. And why? What's the difference? You're both Catholic churches. Why did she have to do all this process for what? So
Mm.
that's when I started to go on that journey of like,
Interesting.
yeah, religion and
Mm.
control and manipulation and all that. And I was like, And then even feeling guilty, for feeling that,
Mm.
because I was taught that, like, oh no, like God is a vengeful God and all this stuff, right? God's gonna punish you, all these things. I'm like, okay, I don't want to think that because God's gonna punish me. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
All these concepts and ideas, that I started to form as a child based on those experiences. So navigating my life where I'm at now, it's just honestly so freeing.
Mm.
Like, I feel like my soul in this lifetime came to experience free will and
Mm.
freedom. And it's been a journey of that, to be free to choose what resonates with me, not what I've been taught that, is God or religion and all of that. Like, because in a sense, they were trying to control who I was and how I was showing up or how I was expressing myself, So it's been a beautiful journey for me to explore, like, what does God mean to me? What is spirituality to me? You know?
I love that. Thank you. Anna. Thank you so much. Yeah, exploring what all this means to you and then guiding others and exploring their relationship to it and what it means to them. And uh may we all be blessed to remember who we really are, where we really came from, and what we're really doing here.
Yes, I love that.
I would love to take a moment to let you just share with people if people want to connect with you more, learn more about your offerings and just you, where can they go?
The easiest way to connect with me is on Instagram. It's I'm sure you're gonna put it in the show notes,
Yeah,
Anna Isabel _ love. And there on my link tree is different options to go to my website for, the plant medicine retreats, specifically ayahuasca, psilocybin, different retreats that I'm offering for women now, one-on-one coaching with women. Yeah, so that's the best way to get in
very cool.
contact with me.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. And to all of our listeners, in case you didn't know, it is free to subscribe to this podcast. So go ahead and subscribe for free if you would like to continue to go on this journey with me on this exploration of God and how we relate to it. And thank you so much for listening. We'll see you guys next time. This is What is God with Schiffer Bloom.